So I was browsing through, I think it was Netflix, and I came across Gang Related, starring Jim Belushi and Tupac Shakur. I believe it was released in 1997, but it must have come out in recorded in 96 or filmed because Tupac passed away in 1996. And I missed it when it came out. I was in college at the time, but I was kind of interested in the idea. Even through the commercials, you could tell was about the fact that Jim Belushi and Tupac were these cops who were killing drug dealers for money and blaming it on being gang related. This was during the 90s when a lot of stuff like Rodney King had come to light and people were coming to understand that there were kind of good police officers and bad ones. And the bad ones existed and were among us. So this movie's kind of about those and tries to create kind of a drama surrounding them. Now, this is not necessarily a spoiler-free review. I'm primarily doing spoiler-free ones because I'm trying to get people to go watch movies, so I don't want to reveal too much. So in this review, I'm going to kind of talk a bit about the movie in general terms, kind of as a spoiler-free version, and then go a little bit deeper and talk a little bit about what actually happens because, spoiler alert, I don't think it's a very good movie. So I want to go ahead and tell you, so if you are interested in what happened but you don't really want to go and watch it, then you don't have to. The first thing you should know about Gang Related is that it is not a short movie. It is almost 2 hours long, and you feel every bit of those 2 hours. When you're streaming, you can like pause it and you can see where it is. And I remember pausing it around the hour point, thinking it was almost more like an hour and a half had gone past. That's kind of how slow it was. And the reason in part for that, I think, is because the movie kind of rushes through its first act. The first act of a movie kind of lays down who the characters are, creates kind of the situation where everything is how everything starts, and then you have the inciting event that kind of triggers off the rest of the movie. That all happens really early in Gang Related. But what happens is because of that, you've got a really long second act. And second acts that are really long can be hard to kind of keep going without either going too many different directions, which I think Gang Related kind of does, or either trying to dwell on a few things too long, which can also drag things out. So Gang Related kind of has that problem in terms of structure. The plot itself is a little bit silly. It has some holes in it. It's kind of some incredulous things kind of happen. Some things like, why did this person do that? Why they do this? Those kind of questions and those are kind of the worst questions to me. When I'm watching the movie, one of the worst things I say is that, why is that character doing that? That doesn't match what they did earlier. You get things like that, it doesn't make sense to you. The funny thing is, the movie has a really good cast called The Show. The movie has a really good cast. It's like Jim Belushi, who was in some good, decent stuff. He's not a great actor, but he was kind of trying to play against type for this role, trying to be more of a tough guy. He's usually more of in comedic movies, and this one he's trying to go for more tough. You had Tupac, who's just a generally compelling guy to watch. He doesn't actually have a lot to do in this movie, so FYI, but he's in it, and overall, he's a generally good performer. Layla Rashawn is in it. Young, nice to just see her on the screen. That's always appreciated. She's in it. James Earl Jones plays a lawyer in it. You have Dennis Quaid is in it. T.C. Carson from Living Singles in it. So you got a lot of good performers there. They got this other guy whose name I can't think of that plays a kind of a creepy guy. He's good though. You've seen him in stuff, but I can't remember his name. He's in it. He's good. So that's the thing. That's one thing that kept me watching this movie was the kind of A-list performers in it and seeing them, especially for some nostalgia for me because being an 80s baby, I saw a lot of movies in the 90s and late 80s and so I recognize these actors and these are them like in their primes. Oh, Gary Cole. He's been in sci-fi stuff. He was the mean boss in Office Space, if you remember that classic. So he a lot of good actors in this, a lot of good actors and actresses in it, and so that's one thing that kept me watching it. That's kind of a check in the good column. Unfortunately, most of the rest of the movie are checks in the bad column. The actual story arc of the characters is odd, and ultimately you kind of like the ending's kind of ambiguous. There's a lot of problems with this movie. So that's why I said this is definitely not a recommendation. I think I would give it something like maybe 3 out of 10. Pretty bad. Like it's not garbage, but it's pretty tough to watch. It's not. It's the production quality overall isn't that great. If you look at it, even for the 1990s, like there's some stuff you can watch in the 1990s that kind of almost holds up today in terms of filmmaking. Like you watch like Die Hard 3, for example. That movie, there are a couple things in HD you notice stunt guys because it's too sharp at distance. But generally, it's filmed well. This one is the kind of movie that now you would maybe see on like Lifetime or something in terms of the filming quality. It was did not seem like it was a big budget movie at the time, the way it's filmed. So I don't imagine that was the case. And it shows. So it definitely shows that this movie was not a big budget movie. It seemed like they had a lot of good actors, but they didn't spend a lot of money on anything else. It seemed to me. The one really good performance, another really good performance was the woman that played the district attorney. She only has a couple moments, but she's really good. And that's the thing. There are a couple little nuggets of something in this that are kind of cool. But unfortunately, there's a whole bunch of mess and weirdness. Oh, Tiny Zeus Lister from Tiny Zeus Lister from Friday is in it. Another guy, and then the guy who plays his boss is a guy who's one of those like kind of creepy dudes, short, creepy guys that you've seen in a bunch of stuff. I think he's in Last Boy Scout. He's in it too. So you got tons of these actors, 90s, character actors, doing their thing in this. So there is stuff to see and kind of enjoy about it. But it just doesn't come together. The structure, the issues with the structure, and I just think that it's ultimately does not leave you satisfied that you watched a good movie. So yeah, I think 3 out of 10 is about where I'm going with that. I'd love to tell you a little bit more about the actual story now. This is the spoiler part, if you want to hear about this. So I'm going to go into the story and kind of break down what kind of actually happens in the movie now. So as I said, the movie's about these two cops, Jim Belushi and Tupac Shakur. And they're crooked in the sense that they rob drug dealers and kill them, murder them to rob them, and then they blame it on being gang related. They try to get the cases assigned to themselves. Now, it's not clear how they do this, but the only case we see, and that's one thing I thought was a mistake, is they don't have them do it once successfully, and it works out fine. Everything's good. The first one they do is the one that hems them up. And apparently they'd done 8 or 9 earlier. In the dialogue, it comes out that they'd done a few other, 8 or 9 other ones. So they come in, they kill this murderer. They use Layla Rashawn as like a decoy. She gets the guy to drive her to a hotel room for a drug deal. Shows up, Jim Belushi's there. He robs the guy. Oh, I'm sorry, they have a drug deal. He leaves, and then Tupac and Jim Belushi follow him and kill him, like to shoot him in his car, which again, also is not an easy thing to do. When somebody's driving, it's very easy to miss and not be able to hit somebody in a car when you're shoot them with a gun. So to me, for this to be something they've done 8 or 9 times and not screwed up before is a little incredulous. But okay, they drive up behind him or next to him or something. They shoot him. He crashes the car. They're assigned the case. It turns out they steal guns from the evidence locker to use for these crimes. So I guess they'll be untraceable. Although, as dirty cops, and later on we see in the movie, they buy clean or guns without their serial numbers on the street. Why aren't you just doing that? Why are you using police evidence, which ties them up later? We'll get to that in a minute. Why are you using evidence to do this when you could just have bought dirty guns? And we see you buy dirty guns that are the serial number's been marked off on them, and just use that. Why are you even doing this and needing to break into, or they're allowed into the evidence room, which they shouldn't be, but until the DA stops them, they're allowed into the evidence room to just come and go as they please, which maybe really is happening, but I don't know. It seems pretty out there that that's the case. Anyway, so they do that. Seems to come off without a hitch. It turns out that Layla Rashawn, who helped lure the guy for the drug deal, is a stripper who also is with Jim Belushi. And later we find out he's married. He's cheating on his wife with this woman. Why he would involve this woman in his schemes, again, unknown. I guess it's because you want to use a woman, but why that woman? If you're involved with her emotionally and sexually, why would you involve this woman in your crimes? I mean, I guess in movies, everything has to connect, but as you'll see in a minute, he goes even further than that. He makes that mistake more than once. So that happens. Turns out that guy, that drug dealer, was an FBI agent, right? It's like, uh-oh. And they freak out. Tupac freaks out. It seems like Jim Belushi is more of the hardcore guy. If you think about Training Day, Jim Belushi is the Denzel Washington character. He's the one that's more hardcore about this. Tupac is like his junior partner. So Tupac's freaking out. He's freaking out. Like, okay, what are we going to do? Well, first thing is, they're the cops on the scene. They saw that there was almost no evidence. So they could have not done anything. But then we wouldn't have a movie. So they do something. What they do is, Jim Belushi does 2 things. One, he goes and starts gaffling people up and trying to find somebody to pin the gun on. He gets the gun back out of lockup to try to use it. And he doesn't know which case it's for. He's grabbing and using his gun to shoot drug dealers. Doesn't even know which case it's for. It turns out the case is a really important one. And we'll get to that in a minute. So he's going around, he takes the gun back out. He's trying to get people to put their fingerprints on the gun. They all have alibis. That's one of the funniest moments of the movie, is them handing the gun to people over and over again. Them, accidentally touching it, or maybe they're smart enough not to touch it. Whatever may happen, he keeps doing this. And finally realizes, I can't get any of these crooks to fall for this, so they have alibis. So they go and they decide, we'll find a homeless man and pin the crime on him, which is a horrible thing to do. I mean, how am I supposed to like these protagonists at all? And the answer is, I don't think I'm supposed to. Kind of. We're definitely not supposed to like Jim Belushi. We're never supposed to like him. But I was kind of thinking maybe because these guys are kind of just robbing drug dealers, the movie wants to be sympathetic towards them. And it kind of does towards Tupac, who they reveal his character has a gambling problem he's trying to pay off. That's his problem. Jim Belushi just wants to retire, so he's just doing it to get rich. Tupac's guy kind of has this gambling problem, is kind of this sad sack dude, so you kind of want to feel sorry, but he's going along with setting up a homeless man for a murder to have him thrown in jail for the rest of his life. What's going on with that? So anyway, so they do it. They find a guy. Where do they find him? Right outside Layla Rashawn character's apartment building. Why they would go of all places there? So they pick him. Do it is beyond me. But they pick him up. He's drunk off his gourd. They pick him up. Turns out, of course, she bumped into him the same night that this murder all happened. She bumped into him. That's going to come and bite him on the butt later, but we'll get to that. So anyway, they drink this guy. They get this guy. They serve him more and more liquor. They trick him into believing that he actually did it. And they go and they turn him in. Now, here's the thing. So they get him. They turn him in and think, well, how would they get him to how would they find him? That's never actually clear. What they do is, though, they go and they get, again, Layla Rashawn, his mistress, to sign an affidavit that she saw the murder and she saw the homeless man, played by Dennis Quaid, do it. And then they pick him up. But it's not clear how they knew where to find him. They kind of skim over that. But honestly, this movie's long enough. Probably good they didn't. So they do that. So now she's even more tied into this. She theoretically could have been seen with the guy who got murdered at wherever because she's a stripper. I guess she's finding him at a strip club. Somebody could have seen her there. Now she's the key witness for it. So this is just, this haywire scheme of theirs is just getting more messy by the minute. They get her. Turns out Dennis Quaid's character is a rich kid who, and his backstory is the most interesting part of the movie. His character is a guy that he cheated on his wife. He was a famous doctor or successful doctor, cheated on his wife, they got a big fight when he got found out. And the woman left the house with his kid, and they got in a car crash down the street because she's so upset and, out of sorts. She crashes. He blames himself, and he dives into a bottle, and that's why he's a homeless man. He's drunk. He's so drunk, though, he doesn't remember who he is, which they have to do. Otherwise, he would immediately say, get my dad. But he doesn't do that because he's so drunk that he doesn't even remember who he is. So he's got like alcoholic amnesia. So he doesn't even know where he is or what he's doing. So that's but the defense attorney figures this out enough to have him plead not guilty. And once he pleads not guilty, the other cops are freaking out. That starts getting some press. His father, I guess, sees the newspaper, I think, comes out with this, and that's when someone finds out who he is. I can't remember exactly, but somehow it's found out who he is, and they go and contact them, and that's when James Earl Jones comes in as the big time lawyer. And once that starts happening, then they've got to have the gun in evidence. But if that gun's there, it means the gun can't be used for the other case. And it turns out the other case is some dude who's like a serial killer. They don't call him a serial killer, but he's like a big-time murderer. He murdered several people. They finally caught him. Belushi and Tupac actually caught him. And they finally caught him for something. And that case gets ruined. I won't go into all the details of that. But that case is a whole subplot. It gets ruined over the fact that they were using the gun for other stuff. They tried to replace the gun with a different gun, and that gun didn't work, etc. So he ends up going free. That's where that thread goes. And now they're stuck. And what they do is now Layla Rashawn has to come in and testify at this big time trial, and she gets cross-examined by James Earl Jones. He cracks her. She admits it. That blows that up. So now now Tupac and Jim Belushi are really up the creek because obviously Layla Rashawn knows who they are, and if she snitches on, she's already admitted that the guy is not guilty. So now Gary Cole is back to hunting them, who plays the FBI agents, like the person who's trying to find he plays the FBI, head of the FBI, trying to track them down. He's chasing them all around, and And you're like, okay, what's going to happen now? Like, well, now they have to kill Layla Rashawn. So now he's about to kill his mistress. Tupac's going along with it. Finally, they do one redeeming thing with Tupac's character. He puts a wire on and gets the guy to say he's going to kill his girlfriend, his mistress, with it. And then he dips out. Jim Belushi doesn't kill him, lets him go. Unfortunately, he doesn't survive. Why doesn't he survive? Well, his bookie comes calling for him. And his bookie comes, shows up with Debo, and they're trying to shake him down. Instead of like pulling his gun or just retreating, he tries to like fist fight both of them, gets himself killed. And that's the end of his story. And Gary Cole shows up next day. What happened with this thing? This must have been Jim Belushi that shot him, but it wasn't. It was his bookie, but we never see them again. That's the end of that story. That's the end of Tupac. And now you got Jim Belushi on the run. He ends up finding Layla Rashawn eventually, shooting her long after he's found guilty and they discover who he is and there's nothing he can do and he's on the run. They figure out his whole scheme. He's gone. He comes back, tries to kill Layla Rashawn, finds her in his bed after everybody thinks he's left the country, he's gone. He comes back to get his revenge on her, shoots her like he's going to kill her, but then she shoots her once in like the shoulder and then leaves. Through a pillow. I guess that was the explanation. Well, he shot her through a pillow, so he couldn't tell where he hit her. Okay, but that seems very imprecise, very messy. Why don't you just take the pillow off and or aim it again, just check the wound or something? But he doesn't. She ends up at the hospital where Dennis Quaid is. But the thing is, they're carting her in the opposite direction of him. So does that mean he missed her, or is he going to save her life? It's not clear. We never find out the answer to that. I'm guessing she lives, because why would they show that if it's not clear he didn't save her? I think that he's just going a different way into the operating room. I don't know. It's vague. And then Jim Belushi, now he's got his revenge. He's going to leave town. He gets into a car to escape, gets set up by T.C. Carson, who's like a bail bondsman guy who does his bidding under duress. Gets him set up in a car. As he's driving off, the driver of the car turns out to be the serial murderer guy that he let get off, turns around, shoots him in the head, movie's over. That's what you have to look forward to if you want to watch 2 hours of gang related. So if you want to know what mess I was talking about, that's the mess. And as I said, there are good moments in it, but it does not come together. It is painfully long, and better for you to hear it from me than spend 2 hours of your life watching it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like button, subscribing, and then hitting the bell so you can get more spoiler-free and spoilerific reviews from Low Key Classic Movies. Have a good day.